Welcome to Brain Power with Dr. Echo, where each week we discuss how your family can boost brain health by addressing mind, body, emotional, and environmental health. And now here's the episode. Hello, parents. Welcome to this session, and you're in for an amazing treat. I have with me Dr. Piper Gibson, and she's going to introduce herself because let me tell you, this lady is a fountain of knowledge and wisdom, and I'm so excited I get to interview her today. So Piper, thank you for coming on with me, and please take it away.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that kind introduction. So my name is Dr. Piper Gibson, and I am a doctor of functional medicine. I also hold a PhD in holistic medicine, holistic nutrition, traditional naturopathy, and I am board certified in natural medicine. I am also a genomics specialist working in the exciting field of epigenetics and genomics. I am a best-selling author. I have a book called TikTok: Common Misconceptions, Real Conversations, and Natural Solutions to Tic Disorders. I use my holistic methods to help parents get access to the tools, testing, and education they need in order to start reducing their child's tic disorder symptoms naturally.
Woo! So she's a tic expert. So yes. And that's a comorbidity that can happen with children with autism and ADHD for sure. So that's why I wanted her to come on here and talk with us today about how can we improve our children's nutrition, right?
Absolutely.
Because I'd like you to explain, Piper, to the parents how important it is, how the role nutrition plays in the way your child behaves.
So a lot of people just feel that food is fuel. You're going to eat it, you're going to fuel your body. But we have to compare it to, if you have a car that runs on gasoline and you pull up to the gas station and you put diesel in it, your car, it's probably not going to run so hot after that, if at all. So we have to look at what we're eating from the unique perspective that we are all bio-individual, meaning we are just as unique on the inside as our fingerprints are on the outside. And so it's really important to start to look at our children and ourselves as individuals and realize that what food might be good for one person may not be great for another person. And so that's really where we start to look at nutrition on this more individual scale and really start to apply it to, the children and the families that we're working with.
Great. Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It will not run well. So what parts does things like sugars and all of those things that kids eat commonly, how does that affect the brain?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we are a society that consumes an excessive amount of sugar. So when we start to look at 150 years ago, we may have eaten in our lives, in our year, a 5-pound bag of sugar, which is, just the bag you buy at the grocery store. You had sugar, maybe your mom made a birthday cake and everybody in the family had a slice, or you went to the state fair and you had some lemonade and maybe you had some cotton candy. But sugar consumption 150 years ago was very few and far between. Right. What has happened in society as we've gone through the Industrial Revolution, as we've started making these massive amounts of packaged processed foods, is we eat between 40 and 60, really closer to 60 pounds of sugar in a year. That is an excessive amount of sugar. And when we look at the recommendations, it's really only recommended that our kids get no more than 3 added teaspoons of sugar a day, which isn't very much. But when you start to look at the packaged processed foods, when you start to look at, the treats that you're giving your kids, the yogurt that we feel is healthy and is just packed with 20 grams of sugar. I mean, for a regular child, 20 grams of sugar from your yogurt is your complete added sugar for the day. That's it. You shouldn't have any more added sugar than that. So we really start to look at sugar for the most part is not doing us any favors. We know that when we consume sugar, it lowers our immune system for up to 12 hours. We get cold and flu-like symptoms when we consume too much sugar. And it's very inflammatory to the brain. So not only are we inflaming our gut with sugar, but when that happens, because our gut and brain are connected, we are really starting to inflame our brain with the sugar. And it's not just the sugar. We're going to talk about some other things too. But the fact that we have started consuming sugar processed food as the bulk of our diet is really detrimental to our health.
Absolutely. Yes. And that goes for both parents and kids.
Absolutely. Agreed. It is not just for your children. I'm talking to you too.
That's right. We're talking to you. So yeah, so when I talk to my patients about, okay, let's talk about food, it's like this overwhelming subject. What are some strategies you have how parents can address or approach changing what their children are eating?
I think the easiest way to approach that is to stop buying the packaged processed foods. So you go to the grocery store, you spend all your time like the granola bars and the Pop-Tarts and the treats. Stop buying those packaged processed foods. Spend your time on the outskirts of the grocery store, focusing on the meat, the chicken, the pork, the animal proteins, vegetables, and fruit. Starting to look at what were people eating 150 years ago or 1,000 years ago. That's going to be a lot closer to the diet that you should be eating instead of your convenience Kraft macaroni and cheese.
Yes. I hear you on that one. So when often children with autism and ADHD, they're often extremely picky and have very limited diets. So can you explain why, first of all, why that is and what can parents do about it?
So I find with the people that I'm working with, the families and the kids that I'm working with, is that we are consuming a lot of dairy and gluten. Let's go back to that convenient Kraft macaroni and cheese, dairy and gluten. Both dairy and gluten create a substance that is very similar to opioids. So we have all of these people in the United States that are addicted to opioids, to painkillers. Well, gluten makes glutamorphine and dairy makes casomorphine, and they can bind to the opioid receptors in your brain. So we find that eating gluten and dairy can actually cause a lot of brain fog, lack of focus, definitely picky eating. When we start to pull those things out, my clients will be like, my kids are eating foods I never imagined they would eat. And that's partially because we are pulling out those things for them that are addictive. That gluten and dairy, it's addictive, and that's all they want to eat. And it leads them to have these very limited diets. So when we start to make those changes, we start to see changes in the pickiness. But one of the best ways to do that is with gateway flavors. So start to think about and ask your kids, have conversations with them. Maybe you have a child that loves pizza. Pizza's their favorite. But what is it about the pizza that they love? Is it the savory cheese and the sauce? Is it the pepperoni? Is it the garlic in the crust? What are those flavors? So let's say you analyze this food and you're like, oh, it's the garlic. They love garlic. Well, start to think about, what else can I put garlic on? You can put garlic on everything. Or, if your kid loves bacon, here's your gateway flavor. Bacon's a great gateway flavor. Use that bacon on broccoli, on asparagus, on you name it, put the bacon with it. So we start to look at what these gateway flavors are. What is it that your kid loves? And how can you incorporate those into new foods? And then you can do things like, just have one bite. It tastes just like that pizza that you love, or it tastes just like that bacon that you love.
Yes. So now that's a super easy way to look at it. Yeah, that's wonderful. So gateway flavors, and then what after that? What's next?
You really want to focus on making sure that your kids are getting the nutrients that they need. And this is one of the reasons that we start to focus on those whole foods, the meat, the fruits, the veggies, that kind of thing. But as we're looking at it, as we're starting to change diet, we want to make sure that they are, one, eating things that they enjoy, but two, that they're getting that nutrition. So we start to look at, what are we having for breakfast? Well, if we're starting our day with a bowl of cereal, and I love to tell my clients to throw their Cheerios in the garbage, we're starting our day with cereal, we're really missing out on protein. Protein is essential for us to be able to make neurotransmitters. So things like serotonin and dopamine, they're going to make us feel good. They're going to make us focus and function. So when we start our morning off with crumb cake and cereal, we are missing that opportunity to make neurotransmitters that are going to help us focus all day at school. So we really have to start looking at our meals. What are some really good ways that we can encourage our kids' bodies to make neurotransmitters? Start your day with a breakfast of protein, eggs and bacon, or make a hash if maybe you're not eating eggs. So really starting to look at how can we make sure that they're getting the nutrients that they need. I mean, we can talk about supplements as well, and that being another good way to get some nutrients into kids, but really starting to focus on, okay, we've kind of passed this taking out the gluten and dairy. We've passed this adding in the gateway flavors. So now that we've made these changes, how can we really start to ramp it up?
Right. Yeah, no, that's important. That's so important. I like that, how you're breaking it down, because lots of parents feel overwhelmed with just when we say eat healthy, right? Like, how do I do that? So thank you for addressing that. So what about children who are constipated, which I find that's the case in 99% of the patients I see with ADHD and autism, they're constipated. So what would you tell parents that would help their children, that would improve their constipation?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things, and there's several things we can do when we talk about constipation. One is to kind of make sure that we're getting more fiber. So the fruits and the vegetables are a really good way, making sure that they're getting plenty of magnesium. Magnesium helps with that, with our muscle movement and our peristalsis, so the digestion that we're doing. So are they getting enough magnesium rich foods? Starting to look at that. You can do Epsom salts baths, which is very rich in magnesium, but can help with constipation. But, for me, when I start to look at kids that I deal with some kids with constipation, is why are you constipated? For me, stool pathogen testing gives us the most answers. We can really start to look at, well, why isn't this child going to the bathroom on a regular basis? And, there's some supplements that you can put in to help people start, having bowel movements like magnesium. But for me, as the holistic perspective, it's like, let's figure out why you're not going in the first place. And for me, a stool pathogen test is really going to give us some good clues. I always say there's a clue in the poo.
Always. There is a clue in the poo. That's absolutely correct. So I know that kids are going back to school, and school lunches, while we're trying to keep them healthy, are often processed, full of sugar. So how do parents address that, especially when most parents are working and they may or may not want to pack lunches for their kids? What are some ways you found that parents can still help their kids be healthy overall?
So, I do this because my son was very sick. And when he got sick, I went to the school. I said, give me your list of ingredients. And so I had this notebook that's about this fat. And I sat down and I read everything. And I was really, really, really blown away by the fact that the healthiest thing on the school menu was the whole wheat donut. Blown away. Everything else was full of preservatives. It was full of sugar. It was full of nitrates, you name it. The food at the school is less than optimal. So, talking to your kids and teaching them how they can make healthier choices is one big thing. It's so if you have a school that has a lot of foods that they can choose from, what's going to be the better option? Should you get, the grilled chicken, or should you get the cheese pizza? So helping them to learn how to decide for themselves, like when you're looking at the school lunch tray, like what's going to be the best option for them to eat. But, packing lunches is actually easier than a lot of people think. I always say, make a bunch of leftovers, make so much food that you have leftovers and you can pack it. So get a really good stainless steel thermos. We like Hydro Flask. You can get Arctic at Walmart. It works just as well. Make those leftovers, warm them up the next morning, pop them in that thermos with maybe a cutie orange, a good bottle of water. Make sure your bottle of water is stainless as well. But really making that easier for yourself. You can prepare a lot of the things that go in those lunches in advance.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. I have 3 kids, so yes, 3 kids with a big appetite, I should say. So yes, the leftovers is a lifesaver. And my kids joke and laugh about how they never take sandwiches to school. I'm like, but why? When does all this nice food?
I know. My kids are in high school. I have one graduating. I have a junior and a senior, and I am still making lunches because they will come home and say, those just not good options. So yeah, I mean, I'm still in it making lunches every single day for two boys with huge appetites. I get it.
Right. Yes, and I find that it's actually easier on me as a parent when I cook in bulk, right? I just go buy the glass storage containers and I stick it in the freezer, and then all we're doing is reheating stuff, and that takes an edge of stress off of you if you feel like, oh, I don't want to just start cooking, right? Which is what it can be time consuming, but if you just maybe take one day and prep and make the meals, then it's easier. So what's some advice you give parents who are busy? Like, how do they make this easier?
Yes, this is my number one advice. Get an Instant Pot. Get an Instant Pot and get 2 of the stainless steel pots that go in it. So I will, for example, I have a big pot of chili. I made a big pot of chili. My kids like it. I know they're going to eat it. I know that I can put it in lunches and we can have it for a dinner. So then I have my Instant Pot. I make it all in the Instant Pot. I got a silicone lid. Thank you, Amazon, for the Instant Pot. I take that Instant Pot, I cook the chili, I serve it, I put the silicone lid on it, I put it in the refrigerator. I'm not transferring anything, and let's just say like the next night I need to use the Instant Pot again. I have 2 containers that I can use to make, something else the next day. So it's become such a huge time saver for me to like simple recipes. I threw in some nitrate-free kielbasa sausage, some ground beef, some onions, some diced tomatoes, green chili, some beef broth, and I made like a cowboy stew. So then everybody loved it. Everybody ate it.
Right.
Making things in the Instant Pot saves so much time. I mean, you can do it in the crock pot too. Start it in the morning before you go to work, come home, it's ready. I mean, you can get a crock pot now that has Bluetooth on it. You can check your phone and be like, oh, my crock pot's done, ding. I mean, think about the ways that you can make it easier on yourself.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I remember telling my kids this morning, Mommy is no longer going to be making pancakes in the morning, because I started on this thing about pancakes in the morning. Like, why am I doing this to myself?
And make a whole bunch as things come throughout the week.
Right, exactly. So that's what I do. And then in the pancakes, to make it extra, I add like flaxseed and all this, because you can add all sorts of things in there and they have no idea it's in there. I mean, it just tastes like pancakes. So that's another way. Yeah, definitely. I like that. So I didn't realize I need to go find a second pot. That one I didn't think of. And now I know about silicone lids. Thank you. See, I'm learning, taking notes. So yeah. So what else, what other advice would you give to parents that you see, and just how can they teach their kids? You know how at schools you often have candy for treats and all of those things. I find that, like, I have a 6-year-old and I teach her, okay, we don't eat all that stuff at home, but at school, of course, she gravitates for it because she never sees it, right? So what do you tell parents? Like, how can they help their children, like prepare their children to not give into temptation at school?
I think it's a matter of educating them. Our kids are smart, and we can sit down with them and have a conversation about what they should and should not be eating, and giving them the reasons why they should and should not be eating it. I mean, and you can do that with little kids. I have kids that I work with, 5 and 6 years old, who their parents have taught them to say, no, thank you. Your teacher's like, oh, here's the reward. No, thank you. Well, those moms and dads go and buy pencils, erasers, little things that they can hand to the teacher and say, please don't hand my child a piece of candy as a reward, but you can give them one of these things. And then I think it's also a matter of educating the schools. I am not above going to the school and being like, listen, stop handing out the candy. Let's think of some other things that we can give out as rewards to kids that are not junk, because teachers are going to pay for it. You hand your kids out a bunch of candy at 10 o'clock in the morning, at 2 o'clock in the morning, everyone's going to be a real treat. So we really have to start to think about food is not a reward. It is not.
Yes, definitely. Food is not a reward, because then they can go the other extreme, right? Start overeating, which that's a whole nother topic. So yes, I agree. So that's wonderful. What else would you advise parents, like as they just get ready for school with their kids? What are things that they should watch out for in terms of nutrition?
Yeah. I mean, one is really making sure that kids go back to school. They get sick because then they're around all the germs. Like, really looking at, is your kid getting enough vitamin D? Are they spending enough time out in the sun? Are we supporting their immune system? If you're eating a bunch of sugar and junk, you're not supporting your child's immune system. So yes, they're more likely to go to school and get sick. But I really think it's not about back to school or going to school. It's about doing this education piece all the time, like having open, honest conversations with your kids. And if you as a parent don't feel like you really understand what healthy food is, there are people out there who can help you with this. People like myself, people like Dr. Echo, who can say, hey, we're going to give you some information on what are these things that are going to be good and what are these things that are going to be bad, and sit down and educate your kids about the things that they're putting into their body. I mean, I really like this analogy because it really hits home for parents, but I say to a lot of the parents, they're like, well, I just don't know if we can give up gluten. And I say, would you go down to the corner drug dealer and buy your kid a bag of cocaine if they were addicted to drugs? And they were like, well, no, heck no, I wouldn't do that. You're not doing them any favors, giving them the sugar, the gluten, and the dairy and the junk. So you have to start to think of it as, these things can be addicting. They can be problematic. How can we circumvent this mess?
Absolutely. Wow. Yes, I love that analogy. I think I'm going to borrow that.
Do that, please. I think I borrowed it from somebody else. I don't remember.
And shock some parents into
it's shocking.
The right thing. Yeah, it's the truth, because those things are addictive. Yeah, absolutely. So, wow, yes, you're absolutely right. It's not just about going back to school, it's the lifestyle change. And parents, it has to start with you. Our kids will do more what they see you doing versus what you say. So if we're telling our kids don't eat sugar, and there you are with the sodas and the whatever else is going on, then they're not going to listen, right? And they're going to keep doing the same thing. And I always tell parents, change your grocery list, because I found that parents like to say, hey, did you hear the doctor? Don't do that. And I'm like, well, you're the one buying the stuff.
Don't have it in the house. I think that is the biggest key. And you usually hear adult women talk about this because they're like, I can't stop eating the potato chips. Don't have it in the house. If you're going to eat a boatload of it, just don't have it in the house. And then you can tell your kids, sorry, we don't have any. We're out of stock. You know, they didn't have it at the grocery store. And I really stress to parents, most of the time, yes, I have older kids now, but when they were little, they didn't have a car. They didn't have a job. They weren't paying for the groceries. I had ultimate cosmic power over, besides what they were going to school, but you know, what they were really eating at home. And so they would see us eat it, then they would eat it. And now they're at the stage where they're like, yeah, I'm not going to eat those things.
Yep. Yeah, it's actually, yeah, that's so important. Parents, you have the power, the ultimate cosmic power. I like that. The ultimate cosmic power to make changes in your kids' diet and yours.
Absolutely.
So, yes. So this has been so wonderful. So tell me, how often, let's talk about tics for a little bit. What's the correlate? How often do tics show up in children with autism and ADHD? And what are things parents can watch out for them to give them a heads up that this might be what's going on?
So, you know, tic disorders are definitely a comorbidity of ADHD, OCD, SPD, autism. So what we look at for tic disorders, and my perspective is not conventional, but we, you know, for my son, he started rapidly blinking his eyes. And we went to the doctor and they're like, it's allergies, just take some allergy medicine. And that wasn't it. And then he started jerking his neck. So tic disorders, if you've had a tic disorder that's either motor or vocal, so there's two types of tics, motor and vocal. Motor would be, you know, clapping the hands, blinking the eyes. Vocal is throat clearing, or maybe they say a word over and over again. If they've had a combination of both for a year, they can get a Tourette syndrome diagnosis. But what we're really seeing with kids who have tics, kids who have Tourette's, kids who have ADHD, kids who have autism, when we start to look at the studies, the great study came out last year talking about Tourette's and the comorbidities, the things that come with it, really are stemming from an imbalanced immune system. So why is your immune system imbalanced? Well, you have about 90% of your immune system in your gut. What are you eating Do you have intestinal permeability? So I really start to look at this whole connection from the gut and the brain. What are we not, and not just what you're eating, but in your environment as well, chemicals, toxins, those kinds of things. But we really start to look at this inflammation and imbalanced immune system for all of those kind of, childhood chronic illnesses that we are seeing on a very significant rise at this point.
Yep. It's like an epidemic going on.
It is.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned something, you said repeating words, right? And that's something that you often see in children with autism. They repeat words. So it's like, so you parents just really need to be keeping their eyes open and their ears open and write things down, or I say, take a video or something and show to your doctor, That's what I usually encourage parents to do, and don't just overlook what symptoms are going on.
I tell parents that, tic disorders, autism, ADHD, sensory processing, OCD, I think that is a diagnosis. It's a label, but that's not the problem. That is a sign that there is a problem. Those are symptoms that you are experiencing. And so when we look at the conventional approach for tic disorders, they say tics are just neurological, ignore them, maybe they'll grow out of them. From my perspective, tics are not purely neurological. There's something else going on downstream. Let's figure out what it is. So I agree with you. Take a video, write things down, get a notebook, everything your kid puts in their mouth, write it down, really starting to document where those signs and symptoms are coming from.
Right. Yes, definitely. Because it's so important, and we want to catch things early, right? Because the earlier we catch it, the earlier we can hopefully reverse it and get the kid on a path to success versus late diagnosis and we have kids struggling. So yes, parents, please pay attention to what's going on. And there's no such thing as a silly question. It's always best to ask. I mean, reach out to Dr. Piper, reach out to me and ask the questions so that we don't miss things for our kids that can be treated,
Exactly.
Right. So, okay, that's wonderful. And where can parents find more about you? And I know you have your book, and we'll put that all in the links, but please tell them where they can find you.
So you can find me at www.regenerating.health, not .com, .health, regenerating.health. I also am on Facebook and Instagram at Regenerating Health. And I have a private Facebook group called Tic Disorder Secrets, A Natural Approach. You can join the group. We share recipes, we share ideas. I've got, a whole bunch of members in there. So it's a great place to find me and get connected. But yeah, that's how you find me.
Wonderful. So thank you so much for your time and just this amazing conversation we just had. And I hope parents that you find it helpful, and watch it again if you need to, and just start putting in practice the things we've talked about to help your child and yourself be the best you can be. So thank you once again, Dr. Piper. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Echo, for having me.